I'm Marion, 58 years old, a retired nurse and widow. My son Andrew was everything to me until he got engaged to Stephanie from a wealthy family. When I couldn't fund their lavish wedding, he cut me off completely. Then came that dinner invitation promising reconciliation. Instead, I found 3 lawyers waiting with papers. "Sign over your house, or never see your granddaughter," he demanded. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, and hit that like and subscribe button to follow my journey of heartbreak and how I fought back. My life has been one of hard work and sacrifice. For 35 years, I dedicated myself to nursing, working long shifts at Memorial Hospital while raising my son alone after my husband Thomas died from heart disease 10 years ago. We were never rich, but we were comfortable, and I was proud of the life we built. I lived modestly, carefully saving for retirement and for Andrew's education. Our modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood was fully paid off, the result of decades of mortgage payments and Thomas's life insurance. It wasn't fancy, but it was home filled with memories and love. After Thomas died, it was just Andrew and me. I worked extra shifts to ensure he could attend a good college without taking on too much debt. Those years were difficult but rewarding. I'd come home exhausted from a 12-hour shift at the hospital, sometimes still in my scrubs to help Andrew with his homework, or just to be there for him. We became incredibly close during those years, or at least I thought we had. Andrew was a bright student who excelled in math and sciences. He graduated with honors from State University with a degree in computer engineering, and I couldn't have been prouder. He landed a good job at a software company, making a comfortable salary that allowed him to afford a nice apartment and a modest lifestyle. He was responsible with money, or so I believed, having watched me budget and save all those years. Then he met Stephanie. She was 27, stunningly beautiful, with long blonde hair, designer clothes, and a personality that commanded attention when she entered a room. Her family owned a real estate development company that had built several high-end communities in our area. She had never worked a day in her life, instead spending her time shopping, traveling, and posting perfectly filtered photos on social media. Andrew was immediately smitten. I still remember the first time he brought her to our house for dinner. She arrived in a shiny red sports car, looked around our modest home with barely disguised disdain, and spent most of the evening on her phone. Still, I smiled and welcomed her because Andrew seemed so happy. "Mom, she's amazing," he told me after that first dinner. "She knows everyone who matters in this city. She's been to Europe 6 times. I nodded and said I was happy for him, though something felt off. The Andrew I raised had always valued substance over flash, kindness over status. But love changes people, and I tried to be supportive. They dated for a year, during which I saw less and less of Andrew. When we did get together, it was always at expensive restaurants that Stephanie selected, where the bill made me wince, but I paid without complaint. Andrew began dressing differently, wearing expensive watches and designer clothes I knew he couldn't afford on his salary. When he called me excited to announce their engagement, I congratulated him sincerely. Despite my reservations about Stephanie, my son's happiness was what mattered most to me. I truly wanted to believe that she made him happy, and that perhaps my concerns were just those of an overprotective mother. The relationship with Stephanie's family, the Richardsons, was strained from the beginning. Her father, Harold, was a loud, boisterous man who boasted constantly about his business success and political connections. Her mother, Joyce, was thin and perfectly groomed, with an artificial smile that never reached her eyes. During our few interactions, they made subtle comments about my profession and home that made it clear they considered themselves several social rungs above me. "It must be so rewarding to be a nurse," Joyce once said with a tight smile. "Though I can't imagine dealing with all those bodily fluids. I suppose someone has to do it." I swallowed my pride and smiled back, determined not to create tension that might affect Andrew's relationship. Little did I know the worst was yet to come. The engagement dinner was held at La Maison, the most exclusive restaurant in town, where entrees started at $60. Harold Richardson insisted on ordering for the entire table without consulting anyone about their preferences, and selected the most expensive bottles of wine without a glance at the price. Over dessert, Stephanie excitedly shared their wedding plans. They had chosen the Royal Palm Resort in Maui, a 5-star luxury property where they would host 100 guests for a weekend of celebration. "We've already put down deposits," she gushed, showing photos of the oceanfront venue on her phone. "The ceremony will be at sunset on the private beach, followed by dinner under the stars with a celebrity chef. Then a farewell brunch on Sunday with a champagne fountain." I smiled politely while mentally calculating what such an extravaganza might cost. My smile froze when Harold casually mentioned the total. "It's a bargain at $150,000, he said, taking a large swallow of his 30-year-old scotch. "Of course, that doesn't include the rehearsal dinner or the honeymoon to Bora Bora." I nearly choked on my water. That was more than I had in my entire retirement account after 35 years of saving. "That's quite elaborate," I managed to say. Stephanie turned to me with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Now, Marion, as per tradition, the mother of the groom handles the rehearsal dinner and the flowers for the ceremony and reception. We've already spoken to the florist and event planner. Your portion comes to $45,000. The restaurant seemed to go silent around me as I processed what she had just said. $45,000. Nearly half of what I had saved for my retirement. Money that needed to last me through my old age, as I had no pension, just my modest savings and Social Security. I'm not sure I can manage that amount," I said carefully, not wanting to ruin the evening but feeling panic rise in my chest. "I'm on a fixed income now, and my retirement savings need to last." Joyce's perfect eyebrows rose slightly. "Surely you've set aside something for your only son's wedding. It's what mothers do." "I helped Andrew through college," I explained. "That took most of my extra savings. I simply don't have that kind of money available without compromising my retirement security." Harold snorted into his drink. "Can't be much of a retirement if $45,000 makes or breaks it." I felt my face flush with embarrassment and anger. I worked hard for every dollar I saved. Not everyone has the luxury of family wealth. Andrew, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up, but not in my defense as I expected. "Mom, we're not asking for that much," he said, his voice tinged with annoyance. "You've always been so cheap. This is the most important day of my life." Cheap. The word stung like a slap. I had worked double shifts for years to give him everything he needed. I had gone without new clothes vacations, even needed dental work at times to ensure he had the best opportunities. "Andrew, I'm not being cheap," I said quietly. "I simply don't have that kind of money to spare. Maybe we could look at alternatives, a smaller wedding perhaps, or I could contribute a smaller amount." Stephanie's face hardened. "Smaller. This is already the compromised version of what we wanted." She turned to Andrew. "I told you this would happen. She doesn't care about our happiness." The evening deteriorated rapidly from there. By the time we left the restaurant, barely speaking, I felt a growing distance between my son and me that had never existed before. The phone call came 3 days after the disastrous dinner. Andrew's voice was cold and angry in a way I'd never heard before. "I can't believe you're doing this to me," he said without even a greeting. "You're ruining the most important day of my life because you're too selfish to help." I sat down at my kitchen table, heart pounding. "Andrew, please try to understand. It's not that I don't want to help. I simply can't afford that amount without putting my future at risk." "What about my future? My future with Stephanie? Her parents are contributing over $100,000, and you can't even manage 45. Do you know how embarrassing this is for me?" I tried to reason with him. "Honey, I raised you to be financially responsible. You know I don't have that kind of disposable income. What about a smaller wedding? Something meaningful, but less extravagant. Stephanie deserves her dream wedding, he snapped. She's already compromised so much. Her friend Jennifer had a $500,000 wedding in Italy last year. Andrew, I said gently, you make a good salary, but do you really want to start your marriage in debt? That kind of financial strain can cause problems down the road. That's rich coming from you, he scoffed. You never took a financial risk in your life. That's why Dad and you were always just getting by while Stephanie's family built real wealth. His words cut deep. Thomas had been a high school teacher who loved his job and his students. We had chosen careers of service, not profit, and I had never regretted that decision until this moment. Use some of your retirement money, Andrew pressed. You could take out a loan against the house. There are options if you actually wanted to help. I can't do that, Andrew. That money needs to last me possibly another 30 years. I won't be a burden to you in my old age because I spent my security on one day, no matter how special. One day, his voice rose. This is the foundation of my new family. If you won't support us now, when will you? Over the next few weeks, I discovered through mutual friends that Andrew had taken out several loans to maintain the lifestyle Stephanie expected. He had purchased a luxury SUV he couldn't afford, put a down payment on a house in Stephanie's preferred neighborhood that was well above his budget, and maxed out credit cards, buying designer clothes, and taking expensive trips. I tried repeatedly to talk to him about my concerns, but each conversation ended worse than the last. Then came the confrontation that broke my heart. I was at the Green Valley Mall returning a sweater when I literally bumped into Joyce Richardson coming out of a designer boutique. Oh, she said, her surprise quickly turning to disdain as she recognized me. Marion, doing some shopping? Just a return, I said politely. How are the wedding plans coming along? Joyce adjusted her $5,000 handbag and looked down her nose at me. We've had to rearrange quite a few things since some people couldn't fulfill their basic obligations. Stephanie's absolutely devastated that her special day is being compromised. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry if there's been a misunderstanding, but I simply can't afford. Can't afford, she interrupted with a harsh laugh. Or won't prioritize your only son's happiness. Let's be honest, Marion. People like you simply don't understand what it takes to maintain a certain standard. Andrew is trying to build a better life than what you provided, and you're holding him back with your working-class mentality. I stood there stunned by her cruelty as she continued. It's actually pathetic. A lifetime of work, and what do you have to show for it? A small house in an average neighborhood, and a retirement fund that can't even cover a proper wedding contribution. No wonder Andrew is so eager to leave that life behind. Before I could respond, she walked away, leaving me shaking with anger and hurt. 2 days later, I ran into Tiffany, one of Stephanie's bridesmaids, at the grocery store. She didn't recognize me at first, and I overheard her phone conversation. Yeah, Steph is freaking out because his mom won't pay for anything. She thought Andrew's family had money, but turns out his mom is just some nurse who lives in a tiny house. Steph says she's not backing out now, though, because she's already announced the engagement on Instagram, and she can't face the embarrassment. Plus, she thinks she can get the old lady's house eventually since it's paid off. I abandoned my shopping cart and left the store devastated by what I'd heard. That evening, I called Andrew and asked him to meet me for coffee, determined to have an honest conversation about my concerns. We met at a local cafe, and I carefully shared what I'd overheard, emphasizing that I only wanted him to be truly happy and not taken advantage of. Andrew's face turned red with fury. You're making this up because you're jealous of Stephanie. You've never given her a chance because she comes from money and makes you feel inadequate. Andrew, that's not true, I pleaded. I'm worried about you, about the debt you're taking on, about whether Stephanie loves you for who you are. That's it, he said, standing up so abruptly his chair fell backward. I'm done. If you can't support my marriage and treat Stephanie with respect, then you're not welcome in my life anymore. Either pay for the wedding like a normal mother would, or don't bother coming at all." He stormed out, leaving me alone with tears streaming down my face. That was the last time I spoke to my son for 3 months. Those 3 months of silence were the most painful of my life, worse even than losing Thomas. At least with Thomas's death, I had the comfort of knowing he hadn't chosen to leave me. Andrew's deliberate silence was a rejection that cut to the bone. I sent texts that went unanswered, left voicemails that were never returned, emails that likely went straight to his trash folder. Each attempt at contact met with a wall of silence that grew more impenetrable with each passing day. Then came the social media post that took my breath away. I rarely used Facebook, but Sarah, my friend and former colleague, called me one evening. "Marian, have you seen Andrew's announcement?" I hadn't. When I logged in there, it was a beautifully staged photo of Andrew and Stephanie holding a tiny ultrasound image. The caption read, "Beyond excited to announce that baby girl Harrison will be joining our family this November, blessed #GirlDad." I sat staring at the screen, joy and pain warring within me. I was going to be a grandmother, something I had dreamed of for years. Yet my own son hadn't even told me directly that I was going to have a grandchild. I had to find out through social media like a distant acquaintance. I immediately went shopping and bought a beautiful handmade baby blanket, a silver rattle, and a card expressing my love and excitement about the baby. I packaged everything carefully and sent it to their address with a note asking if we could please reconnect before the baby arrived. 2 days later, the unopened package was left on my front porch. No note, no explanation. Just a clear message that my olive branch had been rejected. My friends had different advice on how to handle the situation. Lisa, who I'd known since nursing school, urged me to give in. "Just pay for the flowers, Marian," she said over coffee. "Is your relationship with your son really worth less than $45,000? You can't take the money with you when you die." But Sarah, who had raised 3 children as a single mother, disagreed strongly. "Don't you dare give in to this emotional blackmail," she told me fiercely. "If you cave now, they'll know they can manipulate you forever. This isn't about money, it's about respect." I spent hours pondering what to do, torn between my desperate desire to reconcile with Andrew and my conviction that enabling his poor financial decisions and Stephanie's materialism would ultimately harm them. During this time, I also did some research on the Richardson family business, curious about the people who now held such influence over my son. What I discovered was troubling. Despite their shows of wealth, their company had several lawsuits pending from investors, and there were rumors in the business community about cash flow problems and missed payments to contractors. Were they pushing for an extravagant wedding while their business was struggling? Was that why they were so insistent that I contribute far beyond my means? I tried calling Andrew several more times, determined to at least discuss the baby, if nothing else. Each call went straight to voicemail. I left messages expressing my love, my excitement about becoming a grandmother, and my hope for reconciliation, careful to avoid any mention of money or the wedding. Then, after 3 months of silence, my phone rang on a Tuesday evening. Andrew's name appeared on my screen, and my heart nearly stopped. "Andrew," I answered immediately, my voice breaking. "Hi, Mom." He said, his tone surprisingly warm and friendly, as if the previous months of silence had never happened. "How have you been?" I was so shocked by the normalcy of his greeting that I could barely respond. "I've been worried about you, missing you." "Yeah, sorry about that," he said casually. "Things have been crazy with the wedding planning and the baby and everything. Listen, Stephanie and I were talking, and we really want to fix things between us." Hope bloomed in my chest. I want that too, more than anything. "Great, we'd like to invite you to dinner tomorrow night, just the 3 of us. A chance to clear the air before the baby comes. No talk about wedding costs or anything stressful. Just family reconnecting. What do you say?" It seemed too good to be true, but I was so desperate to rebuild our relationship that I pushed aside my doubts. "I'd love that, Andrew. Where should I meet you?" "Le Bistro at 7. I've already made reservations. It's going to be great, Mom. We really want to make things right." As I hung up, tears of relief rolled down my cheeks. My son wanted to reconcile. I was going to be part of my granddaughter's life after all. Whatever happened with the wedding costs, we would work through it together as a family. If only I had recognized the warning signs in his too casual tone, in the suddenness of the olive branch, in the choice of one of the most expensive restaurants in town for a supposedly heartfelt family reunion. But hope is a powerful blinder, and I saw only what I desperately wanted to see. I spent hours getting ready for that dinner. I had my hair done for the first time in months, bought a new dress that I could barely afford, and even splurged on a taxi so I wouldn't have to worry about parking or having a glass of wine with dinner. I wanted everything to be perfect for our reconciliation. The drive to Le Bistro was filled with nervous anticipation. I rehearsed what I might say, how I would express my love for Andrew without judgment, how I would promise to be supportive of his marriage while staying true to my financial boundaries. I imagined meeting my future granddaughter, being present for her birth, holding her tiny hand, watching her grow. The possibilities made me tear up with joy. I arrived at the restaurant at 6:55, not wanting to be late for this crucial meeting. The maitre d' led me to a private dining area in the back, away from the main restaurant floor. That should have been my first clue that something wasn't right. Why would we need a private room for a casual family dinner? When I entered, Andrew and Stephanie were already seated at a table for 6, not 3. And they weren't alone. 3 men in expensive suits sat with them, leather portfolios open in front of them. My steps faltered as I took in the scene. "Andrew?" He stood, his face oddly blank. "Mom, thanks for coming. Have a seat." No hug, no warmth, no "I've missed you," or "It's good to see you." Just "have a seat." As if I were attending a business meeting. Stephanie didn't even stand. She remained seated, one hand resting on her slightly rounded belly, the other holding a glass of water. She wore a smug expression that made my stomach clench. "What's going on?" I asked, remaining standing. "Who are these people?" "These are our attorneys," Andrew said flatly. "Mr. Davis, Mr. Peterson, and Mr. Goldstein." Attorneys. The word hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a reconciliation dinner. This was an ambush. "Please sit down, Mrs. Harrison," the oldest of the 3 men said, gesturing to the empty chair. "We have some matters to discuss." Moving as if in a dream, I lowered myself into the chair, my mind racing to make sense of what was happening. The waiter approached, but Andrew waved him away before I could even think about ordering a much-needed drink. "Let's get straight to the point," Andrew said, sliding a thick document across the table toward me. "These papers transfer ownership of your house to me." I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "My house? What are you talking about?" "It's very simple," Stephanie interjected, her voice dripping with condescension. "You sign over your house to Andrew, and in exchange, you'll be allowed to have a relationship with your granddaughter." The room seemed to tilt around me. This couldn't be happening. My son, my Andrew, couldn't possibly be trying to extort me out of my only significant asset in exchange for access to my grandchild. "This is a joke," I said weakly. "It has to be." "No joke, Mrs. Harrison," said the lawyer, called Davis. "The terms are quite straightforward. The property at 624 Maple Street will be transferred to Andrew and Stephanie Harrison. In exchange, they will permit you visitation rights with their child after she is born." "Permit me," I echoed, finding my voice and my anger simultaneously. "You're talking about my granddaughter, about my son, about the house I've lived in for 30 years and paid for with decades of hard work." Andrew's face remained impassive. "The house is worth about $300,000. Consider it your contribution to our new family since you refused to help with the wedding." "This is insane," I said, looking into my son's eyes, searching for some sign of the boy I had raised. "Andrew, what's happened to you? This isn't who you are." Stephanie laughed a cold, brittle sound. "This is exactly who he is now. Someone who puts his wife and child first, not his stingy old mother." "You have 30 minutes to decide," the youngest lawyer, Goldstein, informed me, checking his watch. "We have a notary waiting in the hotel lobby to witness your signature if you agree to the terms." 30 minutes to decide whether to sign away my home, my security, my future. 30 minutes to choose between financial ruin and never seeing my granddaughter. The sheer cruelty of it took my breath away. I looked directly at Andrew, ignoring everyone else in the room. "Is this really what you want, to blackmail your own mother? Is this the man I raised you to be?" For just a moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. A brief shadow of shame that gave me the smallest hope that my real son was still in there somewhere. But then Stephanie placed her hand over his, her long red nails digging slightly into his skin. "Don't let her manipulate you," she hissed. "Remember what we talked about. She's never supported us, never accepted me." Andrew's momentary humanity vanished, replaced by the cold mask he'd worn since I arrived. "The terms are non-negotiable, Mom. Sign the papers or accept that you won't be part of our lives or our daughter's life. Ever." I sat very still, my mind racing through options. I thought about my home filled with memories of Thomas, of Andrew, growing up, of the life we'd built together. I thought about retirement without that financial security, potentially becoming homeless in my old age. I thought about my unborn granddaughter, who had done nothing to deserve being used as leverage in this grotesque scheme. And in that moment, clarity washed over me. If I gave in to this blackmail, it would never end. Today, it was my house. Tomorrow, it would be my retirement account. Then whatever else I managed to accumulate. People who resort to extortion once will do it again and again. More importantly, what kind of example would I be setting? That it's okay to be bullied, to be extorted, to give up everything you've worked for under duress. That wasn't the legacy I wanted to leave my granddaughter. I stood up slowly, gathering my purse and dignity. "I will not be signing anything," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Andrew, when you're ready to have a real conversation without lawyers and ultimatums, I'll be there. I will always love you, but I won't be blackmailed, not even for the privilege of being a grandmother." Stephanie's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this." I looked at her, really looked at the woman who had turned my son into someone I barely recognized. "I already regret many things, but standing up for myself won't be one of them." I turned and walked out, my legs somehow carrying me despite feeling like they might buckle at any moment. I made it to the street before the tears began to fall, great heaving sobs that came from the depths of my broken heart. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. I moved through them like a ghost, going through the motions of living, while feeling completely hollowed out inside. The loss of Andrew felt permanent now, a deliberate severing that seemed impossible to repair. After a week of barely functioning, I realized I needed to take action, if only to protect myself. If Andrew and Stephanie were desperate enough to try to take my house, what else might they do? I made an appointment with Jessica Winters, a family law attorney recommended by Sarah. Jessica was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who listened to my story with increasing alarm. "What they attempted is not only morally reprehensible, but potentially illegal," she told me after I'd recounted the dinner ambush. "Threatening to withhold access to a grandchild in exchange for property could be considered extortion under certain circumstances." "I don't want to get my son in legal trouble," I said quickly. "I just want to protect myself and hopefully find a way to have a relationship with my granddaughter." "I understand," Jessica said kindly. "But you need to be prepared for all possibilities. Grandparents' rights vary by state, and they're generally quite limited unless there are exceptional circumstances. Your best approach is documentation and protection right now. She helped me prepare a detailed account of everything that had happened, advised me to secure my financial accounts with new passwords and security measures, and suggested I check my credit report regularly in case Andrew had access to my personal information that could be used to open accounts in my name. People driven by financial desperation sometimes cross lines they never thought they would, she warned. Even family. Her words proved prophetic sooner than I could have imagined. 3 days after our meeting, I was having coffee at the small cafe near my house when a man sat down at my table without asking. I looked up in surprise to find myself facing Harold Richardson, Stephanie's father. "Marion," he said quietly, "we need to talk." I nearly got up and left, but something in his demeanor stopped me. Gone was the boisterous, overbearing man I'd met at the engagement dinner. This Harold looked tired, defeated, and surprisingly ashamed. "I owe you an apology," he said, staring into his coffee cup rather than meeting my eyes. "What Stephanie and Andrew tried to do to you was unconscionable. I want you to know I had no part in it, and I'm deeply sorry." I was too shocked to respond immediately, and he continued. "The truth is, our family business is failing. Has been for years. The lifestyle we've maintained, the one Stephanie grew up expecting as her birthright, is built on sand. We're months away from bankruptcy, possibly worse." "Then why push for such an extravagant wedding?" I asked. He laughed bitterly. "Appearances, always appearances. Joyce and Stephanie believe if we keep up the facade long enough, something will turn around. A big investor will save us. A miracle will happen." He shook his head. "I've enabled their delusions for too long." "And Andrew? Does he know about your financial situation?" "I doubt it. Stephanie is very good at maintaining illusions, but he must suspect something. Why else would he agree to go after your house?" Harold looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "They're drowning in debt, Marion. The fancy car, the expensive apartment, the designer clothes, all on credit. They needed your house to use as collateral for more loans." The pieces began falling into place. Andrew's increasing desperation, the extreme measures, the sudden ultimatum. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore, or even about punishing me for refusing to pay. It was about financial survival. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because it has to stop," Harold said. "This cycle of deception and materialism has destroyed my family. I don't want to see it destroy yours too." He pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "This is the contact information for our family accountant. He has documentation of everything, including some questionable financial moves Stephanie and Andrew have made recently. You might need it to protect yourself." As Harold left, I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this new information. When I got home, I called Jessica and shared what I'd learned. She advised me to investigate further, to document everything, and to prepare for the possibility that this situation could get much worse before it got better. Acting on her advice, I spent the next week gathering information. I contacted the accountant Harold had mentioned, who reluctantly confirmed that Andrew and Stephanie had accumulated over $200,000 in debt in less than a year. I checked my credit report and discovered, to my horror, 3 credit card applications submitted in my name without my knowledge in the previous month. Working with my bank and the credit bureaus, I was able to prove identity theft and have the fraudulent accounts closed. I filed a police report, careful to say I didn't know who had used my information, unable to bring myself to formally accuse my own son, despite the overwhelming evidence. With Jessica's help, I gathered all the documentation, including the attempted extortion at the restaurant, the fraudulent credit applications, and statements from witnesses who had heard Stephanie discussing her plans to acquire my house. When we had everything in order, Jessica suggested a meeting on neutral ground at her office with Andrew and Stephanie and their attorneys present. I agreed, though the thought of facing them again made me physically ill. The meeting was set for a Tuesday morning. I arrived early, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. Jessica reassured me with a gentle squeeze of my hand. before Andrew and Stephanie entered, followed by the same 3 lawyers from the restaurant. Stephanie's smug expression faltered when she saw the thick folders of documentation on Jessica's desk. Andrew wouldn't meet my eyes at all. "Thank you all for coming," Jessica began professionally. "We've asked for this meeting to address some serious concerns regarding attempts to defraud and extort my client Marion Harrison." The oldest lawyer, Davis, scoffed. "Those are serious allegations without merit." "Are they?" Jessica opened the first folder. "We have documented evidence of an attempt to extort Mrs. Harrison's property in exchange for access to her grandchild. We have proof of 3 fraudulent credit card applications submitted using her personal information. We have witness statements regarding Ms. Richardson's stated intentions to acquire Mrs. Harrison's home through coercive means." She laid out document after document as she spoke. I watched the blood drain from Andrew's face as he realized the extent of our evidence. "These are matters that could involve criminal charges," Jessica continued calmly. "However, Mrs. Harrison has no desire to pursue that avenue if we can reach a reasonable resolution today." "This is ridiculous," Stephanie snapped, but I noticed she was clutching Andrew's arm with white knuckles. "What do you want?" asked Goldstein, the youngest attorney, who seemed to be assessing the situation more realistically than his colleagues. "First, a legally binding agreement that Andrew and Stephanie will cease all attempts to acquire Mrs. Harrison's property or assets. Second, confirmation that all fraudulently obtained information has been destroyed. Third, a reasonable grandparent visitation agreement to be determined once the child is born." Andrew finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes broke my heart anew. Fear, shame, and deep down, a desperate plea for help. "Can I speak to my mother alone?" he asked suddenly. Stephanie immediately protested, but after a moment of tense discussion, everyone agreed to give us the room for 15 minutes. When the door closed behind them, Andrew seemed to collapse in on himself, putting his head in his hands. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I don't even know who I am anymore." I moved to sit beside him, not touching him yet, but close enough that he could reach for me if he wanted to. "What happened, Andrew? This isn't you." "I got in too deep," he admitted, his voice breaking. "Stephanie kept wanting more expensive things, a bigger apartment, fancier vacations. I maxed out my credit cards, trying to give her the lifestyle she expected. Then her parents started having money problems, and suddenly they couldn't contribute to the wedding as much as they'd promised. But Stephanie wouldn't scale back. She said canceling or changing plans would be humiliating. "So you came after my house," I said softly. He nodded miserably. "It wasn't my idea at first. Stephanie said it was the only solution, that you owed us for not helping with the wedding, that if you really loved me, you'd want to help. And I was desperate enough to believe her." He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. "I knew it was wrong, Mom. I knew it the whole time. But I was so scared of losing her, of failing, of admitting I couldn't provide the life she wanted." "Oh, Andrew," I sighed, finally reaching out to take his hand. "Material things aren't what make a life worth living. Your father and I didn't have much, but we had love, respect, and integrity. Those are the real foundations of happiness." "I see that now," he said. "But I don't know how to fix this mess. Stephanie's pregnant, we're drowning in debt, and her parents are about to lose everything. She'll never forgive me if I can't maintain the lifestyle she expects." "Then maybe forgiveness isn't what you need from her," I said gently. "Maybe what you need is to rediscover your own values, your own strength." We talked for the full 15 minutes, really talked for the first time in over a year. By the time the others returned, Andrew had made a decision that would change the course of all our lives. He stood as they entered, straightening his shoulders. "The agreement my mother's attorney proposed is reasonable, and I accept all terms without negotiation. Additionally, I want to state for the record that my mother was not responsible for any of this situation. The fault is entirely mine and Stephanie's. Stephanie's face contorted with rage. What are you doing? We had a plan. A plan to blackmail my mother and potentially commit fraud, Andrew said firmly. I was wrong to go along with it, and I'm ending it now. If you do this, we're done, Stephanie hissed. I'll take the baby, and you'll never see her. No, you won't, Jessica interjected calmly. That would be parental alienation, and the courts take a very dim view of that, especially when there's documented evidence of prior attempts at extortion using the child as leverage. Stephanie stormed out, her lawyers following quickly behind her. Andrew remained signing all the documents Jessica had prepared, adding an additional statement taking full responsibility for the fraudulent credit applications. When we finished, he turned to me with tears in his eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, Mom. What I did was unforgivable, but I promise I'm going to work every day to become the man you raised me to be, again, the man Dad would have been proud of. I held my son for the first time in nearly a year, feeling the shuddering sobs that racked his body, and knowing that though the road ahead would be difficult, we had taken the first step toward healing. 6 months passed, bringing profound changes to all our lives. Andrew filed for divorce from Stephanie, a difficult process, complicated by her pregnancy and their financial entanglements. He moved out of their expensive apartment and into a modest one-bedroom place, taking only what he had brought into the relationship, and leaving Stephanie with the luxury items she valued so highly. He got a second job on weekends to start paying off his debts, living on a strict budget that reminded me of our early days after Thomas died. I helped where I could, not with money, but with support. Cooking meals he could freeze, teaching him the budgeting skills I'd used throughout my life, and most importantly, being there to listen without judgment as he processed his grief and shame. The pregnancy progressed, and despite the acrimony of the divorce proceedings, Andrew fought for and won the right to be present at the birth of his daughter. When little Lily came into the world on a snowy November morning, weighing 6 pounds and 4 ounces, I was in the waiting room, my heart full of a love I hadn't known was possible. Stephanie initially tried to limit my contact with Lily, but Andrew stood firm on my right to know my granddaughter. The legal agreement we had signed months earlier proved invaluable, giving me specifically outlined visitation rights that even Stephanie's expensive lawyers couldn't circumvent. The first time I held Lily with her tiny rosebud mouth and dark hair so like her father's, I wept with joy. The journey to that moment had been painful beyond words, but as I rocked my granddaughter in my arms, I knew every bit of that pain had been worth it. Reconciliation between Andrew and me wasn't instantaneous or easy. Trust once broken takes time to rebuild. We had honest, sometimes painful conversations about what had happened, about the values I thought I had instilled in him, about the materialism and status anxiety that had led him so far astray. I was trying to be someone I'm not, he admitted one evening as we sat on my porch watching the sunset. Stephanie made me feel like who I wasn't good enough. Like the life you and Dad provided wasn't good enough. I needed to be more, have more, spend more to be worthy of her. And now, I asked gently, now I'm remembering what real worth looks like. He said, reaching for my hand. It looks like working hard and living within your means. Like having integrity, even when it costs you something. Like being the kind of parent who puts their child's well-being above appearances. He smiled sadly. Like you always were for me, even when I was too blind to see it. The Richardson family's financial empire finally collapsed under the weight of its debts and deceptions. Harold filed for bankruptcy, their mansion was foreclosed upon, and Joyce filed for divorce shortly thereafter, unable to accept their reduced circumstances. Stephanie moved in with a wealthy aunt, still determined to maintain the lifestyle she felt entitled to, but now without Andrew to bankroll her aspirations. She remained difficult about co-parenting arrangements, But with time and the structure of their legal agreement, a workable routine was established. As for me, I kept my house, my retirement savings, and most precious of all, my relationship with my son and granddaughter. The attempted extortion had failed, but it had ultimately led to something I never could have anticipated: a stronger, more authentic bond with Andrew, based on hard-earned mutual respect. 1 year after that terrible dinner with the lawyers, Andrew and I sat in my backyard, watching Lily take her first tentative steps on the grass, her chubby legs wobbling with each determined stride. "You know what I realized, Mom?" Andrew said, his eyes never leaving his daughter. "When you refused to sign those papers, you weren't just protecting yourself. You were protecting me too, and Lily. How do you figure that? If you had given in, it would never have stopped. We would have taken everything you had, and it still wouldn't have fixed the real problem. I would have kept living beyond my means, kept trying to buy Stephanie's approval, kept spiraling further into debt and desperation." He looked at me, then his eyes clear and present in a way they hadn't been during those dark times. "Your refusal forced me to face reality. It saved all of us in the end. True love isn't about giving people whatever they want. Sometimes it's about having the courage to say no when what they want would harm them or you. It's about standing firm in your values, even when it would be easier to give in. It's about believing that who you are is enough, that what you have is enough, that love built on authenticity is stronger than love built on appearances." As I watch my son rebuilding his life with integrity and my granddaughter growing stronger every day, I know that the pain we endured was necessary. Like a broken bone that heals stronger at the point of fracture, our family bond was tested to the breaking point, but ultimately reinforced by the truth and love that survived. Have you ever had to stand your ground, even when it meant possibly losing someone you love? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and share with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's sometimes the most loving thing you can do. Thank you for listening, and remember, true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in love, integrity, and the courage to live by your values.